Today's kind of a weird one, but it's actually, I'm going to show you why I do what I do. I've spoken many times, I'm not afraid to say this, that I had my own financial problems as a young age. And I think that what has got me into the work that I do on the killdebt.com and the law I've practiced for 30 years. I know the people I represented, and I know my members because I am one of them. I was one, and I've gone through everything that my clients in the past have gone through. I can understand, I can see where they're going, and I can offer them a light at the end of the tunnel from personal experience. In fact, when you sign on to the website, it's going to sound like a commercial for the website. It kind of is, but this is a really cool story involving the end of the world and a murder trial. That's right. The end of the world and a murder trial, both of which I was part of, and part of an ID theft. The signing point of when you log into killdebt.com, I will read it. Rest assured, there's nothing you may be going through with debt issues that I've not been through myself. And I mean that, I've lived that. Debt collection defense has been 85% of my business. I do a little corporate work for some corporate friends, if it's exciting, but ID theft is the remaining part of my business. And indeed, even the ID theft aspect comes through the debt collection defense, meaning I've talked about this before. A lot of my clients, their wife stole their ID and now they put it in the husband's name, or the cousins. A lot of student loans are like that, where somebody signed that shouldn't, and now poor grandma or poor aunt is on the hook. But most of ID theft, in my case, it's relatives that make their way to debt collection lawsuits that I got to get my client out of and clean up the credit. This video emanates from how I learned about ID theft the hard way. Again, it was the end of the world, a murder trial that led me to be an ID theft specialist, if you will. Back in 1998, look at the gray hair. You're going to see some videos in a minute that showed me to be so young. But I was doing a lot of lemon law. Lemon law is basically you're alleging that the warranty of merchantability and the express warranty on a vehicle is not standing. It's not working, and there's so many repairs. Obviously, the vehicle is a lemon, and then I would get my client's money back and get attorney fees paid. I was doing a tremendous amount of that, and one of my former lemon law clients came to me and said, "Boy, you sure are good on these cases. I wish you could help my boss." I said, "What's going on with your boss? What kind of car does he have?" He goes, "It's not a car, it's a computer. And we've started this upscale grocery in Detroit." This was right before Whole Foods and all the really, the moneyed grocery market started coming out. And this one was called, interestingly enough, the market was called Produce Palace. And the client told me that every time someone came in with a credit card that had 00 on it, meaning most credit cards have the 2-digit. So if it's a 1998 credit card, it'll say 98. So that was the problem. A card would come in, and this was a new business, an upscale with a lot of money involved, just starting business. That's where most businesses fail the first year. And this first year, people were coming in with credit cards with 00 because, like all credit cards, they're 3 or 4 years ahead. So anybody with a 1997 credit card had 00. And they would come through and they would crash this new business. And it would crash all 12 of the cash registers because the computer at the time saw this as 1900. The thought of when computers were created and coded, and that's the best I can do about this, there was no 4 digits. But now with 2000, so the computer registered 1900 and would crash the computer. So I took a lemon law lawsuit, changed the word car or automobile, and put in computer. and filed this lemon law computer case. It turned out to be the world's first Y2K case. You remember, if you do, back in before 2000, the world was going to come to an end and planes were going to fall out of the sky. They were, and no one was doing anything about it. And so I filed that case and immediately started getting calls at home from other countries, from big business, from news celebrities. And I remember at the time my wife said to me, she took a call. It may have been somebody from Peter Jennings or something like that. And she looked at the phone and looked at me and she said, "What have you done?" Because I was always getting into these weird cases. And that was the weirdest. It was the first lawsuit filed under the Y2K that alleged the world was going to come to an end if this was not fixed. And I had started this lawsuit as a lemon law lawsuit without any thought that it was as big and as huge and as impactful as it was. And within a year, I was the lawyer of the year in Michigan. Let me put up what's called the Lawyers Weekly. All lawyers at that time read this newspaper. They got the Lawyers Weekly and updated on the latest cases and who's doing what. It was like a newspaper for lawyers. So there was like 30 to 50,000 of these printed every couple of weeks. And I was on the front as me and 9 other people as the Lawyers of the Year. Let me just put up a picture. Shazam. And then here's another one with me with my back to the client. Shazam. Again, I know how young I look, but that's a newspaper, a Lawyers Weekly, celebrating me as the Lawyer of the Year. There's a point I'm making here. I believed everything that was going on. I could see all these huge, in fact, if you watch the movie Office Space, that's based on the Y2K. And all these companies were getting rich fixing the code before the 1999 December 31st happened. And largely, I believe, because of my lawsuit, they had me traveling around the world and going here, and I'd be sitting there listening to them talk about this great attorney that filed this lawsuit, and I'd be looking around with everybody else, and it was me. And I eventually got called in front of Congress, in front of John McCain, who started complaining about damn lawyers, and then another senator starts defending me, and it was just a big mess. And every couple of days I'm off somewhere, and it's not good for my family life. But 2000 came and went, and there were no problems, and I felt like I had a part in the resolution of that. I had advocated everybody keep water and supplies, and I took Army MREs, and I got some weapons. I'm not a gun person back then, but that's what I did. And so I had this room, the Y2K room, with all my supplies, and that's it. The Y2K bug came and went, and that was the end of that for me. But the bug came back. Here's the ID theft part. And I started getting calls from courts. They're saying, "Mr. Parker, where are you? The judge is very mad at you. Blah, 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 blah. You're not showing up. I'm going to default your client." And that's a call no attorney wants to get. Every client fears, "Oh, the secretary didn't put it on my schedule. I didn't put it on the schedule." And I'm scratching my head. It were criminal cases and I was doing lemon law, breach of contract cases. And so finally, I started looking into this, and a clerk at a court and I did some homework, and we discovered that a Brian Parker, exact name as me, but with a different initial, and I won't say the initial, had been in the law library. In jails, the law library has to be fully stocked and supplied so people have their right to appeal. It's just like any law library at the time. It was less computers, more library. And so every week they got the Lawyers Weekly, and here's Brian Parker, the jailbird, looking at Brian Parker, the attorney, with the same name. And so he took my bar license number and became me and started attending courts. And I'd get a call from a court and go, "Well, that isn't my case." And then I'd discover who it was. And I got his picture. He doesn't look a thing like me. So I would write his warden and complain about the security system. How does this happen? And they would promise to take measures and send him to a new jail. I did not know they did that. they'd send him to a new jail rather than deal with it. So he'd set up his Brian Parker law practice, and what he did is he'd file stuff in his Brian Parker's name with Brian Parker's, every lawyer is assigned a license, and he used my license number and had his outside person, paralegal if you will, do all the work. He was getting retainers in my name and not showing up. He's in jail, so the people couldn't do anything about it. But all they would do is keep moving this guy. So I learned a lot about him, and one of his convictions was for manslaughter. So I'm like, whoa, I got a young family. Also, whatever he's up to, and with the filings, I didn't want to be pulled over and the cops looking at me, going after me for whatever he's done. So I had my gun in my Y2K room, and I made sure that was by me. It was by my bed. And again, I had a young family to protect. I didn't know what this guy was up to or capable of. And I kept a file of all the letters that I'd written to the wardens every time he got moved. So here's the murder ID theft part of this story. The end of this came in a weird way. A man was in trial for murder in Oakland County Court, and he did not have an attorney. So he went to Brian Parker, who was known as the attorney. He just moved to this new jail, and asked, could he give advice? And Brian Parker, the jailbird, offered to help him and represent him. So the guy said, okay. So Brian Parker, the jailbird, got him his new client, who thought he had attorney-client privilege, to confess to him that he had done the murder, thinking he was covered. He was safe to tell his attorney. But bad Brian Parker, a lot of criminals, I don't know if they all are, or some are, some. It's just a microscope maybe of the population, but he's kind of smart. And so what he did, as representing this new murderer, he went to the prosecutor to make a deal. But the deal was for him and not for his client. And he told the prosecutor, I have evidence that my client committed the murder. And if you knock off years off my sentence, I think it was for his manslaughter, I'll give you what he said. He was going to snitch on his own client. And the deal was set up until the client discovered what is happening, and he snitched on his own attorney, me, and now the stuff hit the fan. I'm getting calls from the murder trial, the judge in the murder trial, saying, what are you doing? You just breached. You're going to go down for this. Blah, 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 blah. I don't know how they did not put two and two together, but it's common that different courts see a murder. There's an arraignment, and then there's a new attorney that show a prosecutor. And somehow I got lost in the system as just being an attorney that was using the system and was going to squeal on his own client. It was a mess, and it got out of hand. So I was forced to come to a murder trial and be a witness that I wasn't me. I was somebody else. I was me, but not me. And it got worked out. And I just was so sick of it. And I thought, hey man, I should get in. I got into this line of work because I understood again what identity theft victims go through. I've done and represented lots of people, mostly with credit issues, where somebody stole their ID, it's on the credit. I represented one client, had 15 lawsuits and marks on his credit, and he was perfect, 800 credit score, just shot. I got him a lot of money per case, didn't want it. And this is the ID theft victim. You can keep your money, I don't want a check. I want my credit cleared. I want my good name back to the way it is. I do my best to make that happen, having been there, having been subject to ID theft. And I got into the work of ID theft because of my experiences. My personal experience is that, again, ID theft victims can't do enough to prove a negative, that they're not doing all this bad stuff. And judges and courts demand that they do more. Show me a police report. Let me see your signature. And you're like, I didn't do anything. So I went in, I'm going to show you something funny. I went into ID theft. And at the time, again, I look very young, I ran this commercial. Shazam.
Hi, I'm attorney Brian Parker.
No, I'm attorney Brian Parker.
No, I'm Brian Parker, and if, like me, you've been the victim of identity theft, we can help.
And if your identity is stolen or you have inaccuracies on your credit, call us immediately at 800-737-2345. We can eliminate your debt, fix your credit, and sue the bad guys for money damages under the new Fair Credit Reporting Act. Call Free Credit Cleaner at 800-737-2345.
Stop. Call me and I'll clean up your credit and make the bad guys pay you.
So that's kind of funny, but the thought was, I'm not me, I'm me. And I established myself as an ID theft attorney, and I've done that ever since, knowing full well what an ID theft victim goes through. Because when I became part of it, the end of the world and murder involved, and I turned it around, like I tell my debt defense clients how I turn it around and show them the light at the end of the tunnel, that I've been through what they've gone through. And I wanted to show you who I am, especially as it pertains to ID theft. And this is why I do what I do at killdebt.com. It is not a service where I'm offering myself as an attorney. It is a service of my experiences in 30 years of litigation, showing you I've been through everything. And you can use up to 1,000 templates that I have for your own case. Just add your state law and your facts and evidence. And that's what killdebt.com is. As I say that, I think about the murder situation and that manslaughter convict, and it's weird to call it killdebt.com. And it's turning into a commercial now. But I want you to check out the resources of killdebt.com. They're from a person that's not just whistling Dixie. I'm not blowing smoke. I've lived and breathed this stuff, and my site can help you if you want to help yourself in collection self-defense. Hope you enjoyed the story. Thank you. Bye-bye.